Forgotten Gods. The mountain stood tall and imposing, its peaks shrouded in mist, a silent guardian over the small, isolated village at its base. For generations, the villagers had lived in the shadow of the mountain, their lives governed by the ancient legends that spoke of forgotten gods buried deep within. The villagers knew better than to venture too close, for it was said that those who disturbed the slumber of these gods would pay a terrible price. A team of archaeologists, led by the determined Dr. Lydia Harper, arrived in the village with a singular goal: to uncover the truth behind the legends. Lydia was a woman driven by a thirst for knowledge, her curiosity often pushing her into dangerous and uncharted territories. Her team consisted of 4 other experts: Dr. Nathan Cole, an enigmatic linguist with a deep fascination for ancient languages; Dr. Isabel Turner, a historian whose love for lost civilizations had often led her to remote corners of the world; Lucas Reed, a geologist with a calm and methodical approach to his work; and Maya Brooks, a young, passionate archaeologist eager to make her mark in the field. From the moment they arrived, the villagers treated them with wary suspicion. The elders spoke in hushed tones, warning them of the mountain's dangers, but Lydia and her team were not deterred. They had heard such warnings before, and their excitement overshadowed any fear. One evening, as they sat around the fire in the village's modest inn, an old man approached them. His face was lined with age, his eyes clouded with memories of a past long forgotten by most. "The gods you seek are not to be trifled with," he warned, his voice trembling. "They offer power, yes, but it is a power that corrupts. Those who accept their gifts will find only ruin." The old man's words lingered in the air, but Lydia dismissed them as mere superstition. She was too close to her goal to turn back now. The next morning, they began their ascent up the mountain. The path was steep and treacherous, with the air growing thinner as they climbed higher. Despite the physical strain, Lydia's mind buzzed with anticipation. The possibility of discovering an untouched temple, a place where forgotten gods were once worshipped, filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Nathan, usually quiet and reserved, couldn't shake a growing unease. He had spent his life decoding ancient texts and unraveling the mysteries of long-dead civilizations, but something about this expedition felt different. It was as if the mountain itself was alive, watching them with unseen eyes. Isabel, too, felt a strange tension in the air. She had always found solace in history, in the stories of those who came before, but now, as they approached the temple, a cold dread settled in her chest. She couldn't help but wonder if they were about to repeat the mistakes of the past. Lucas, ever the pragmatist, focused on the task at hand. He measured the rock formations, noting the peculiarities in the mountain structure, but even he couldn't deny the unsettling atmosphere that surrounded them. His usually steady hands trembled slightly as they neared the temple's entrance. Maya, the youngest and most enthusiastic of the group, felt her excitement tempered by an inexplicable fear. She had dreamed of this moment, of making a discovery that would cement her place in the annals of archaeology, but now that she was here, a small voice in the back of her mind urged her to turn back. Finally, they reached the temple, hidden deep within a narrow crevice in the mountain. The stone doors were massive, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Lydia, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement, pushed open the doors, and the team stepped into the darkness. The interior of the temple was vast and foreboding. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, and the walls were lined with statues of strange, otherworldly beings. Each statue seemed to watch them, their hollow eyes following the team as they ventured deeper into the temple. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone altar, upon which rested a large, ancient tome. Lydia approached it with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch the book. The moment her fingers brushed the cover, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The statue's eyes glowed with an eerie light, and a deep, resonant voice filled the air, speaking in a language none of them could understand. The sound sent a chill down Lydia's spine, but she couldn't pull herself away. Nathan's heart raced as he watched Lydia open the tome. The symbols on the pages shifted and changed, translating themselves in his mind. It was a history of the forgotten gods, beings of immense power who had once ruled the earth with an iron fist. They had demanded worship, sacrifice, and absolute loyalty. But as humanity advanced, the gods were gradually abandoned, their temples left to decay, their names erased from history. The gods had not taken kindly to being forgotten. In their anger, they had sought to destroy the world that had turned its back on them, but the ancient priests, fearing their wrath, had used powerful magic to imprison them within the mountain. As the realization of what they had done dawned on the team, the ground shook violently, and the air grew colder. The gods were awakening. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the chamber, and the statues began to move, their stone forms cracking and shifting. The gods, now freed from their prison, stood before the archaeologists, their forms ethereal and terrifying. One of the gods, its voice booming and full of malice, offered the team a choice. Release us, and we shall grant you powers beyond your wildest dreams. Refuse, and you shall perish. Lydia, her mind racing, knew this was a moment of decision. But before she could speak, Maya, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and excitement, stepped forward. We accept, she said, her eyes wide with wonder. The gods smiled, their expressions cold and calculating. Very well, they intoned. But know this, power always comes with a price. As the gods began to dissolve into tendrils of energy, wrapping around each member of the team, they felt a surge of power unlike anything they had ever experienced. Lydia's senses heightened, her mind ablaze with newfound knowledge. Nathan felt his understanding of languages deepen, as if he could now speak the words of the universe itself. Isabel was overwhelmed by visions of the past, seeing history unfold before her eyes. Lucas found himself attuned to the earth, able to feel and manipulate the very ground beneath him. And Maya, consumed by her desire for recognition, discovered she could command fire, the flames dancing at her fingertips. But with the power came a creeping darkness. Lydia's mind, once sharp and focused, became clouded with doubt and fear. She could no longer tell if the knowledge she gained was real or a cruel trick of the gods. Nathan's gift turned into a curse, the voices of the ancient languages filling his mind until he could no longer think. Isabel's visions, once fascinating, became nightmarish, showing her the horrors of the past in excruciating detail. Lucas lost control of his power, causing tremors and landslides that threatened to bury them all. And Maya, who had embraced her power so eagerly, found herself slowly consumed by the flames she had unleashed, her skin burning from the inside out. The team, once united in their quest for knowledge, began to fracture under the weight of their gifts. Paranoia set in, and they turned on each other, each convinced that the others were hiding something, that they were the ones responsible for their suffering. Desperate to undo their mistake, Lydia and the remaining members of the team returned to the temple, hoping to reseal the gods before it was too late. But the gods, now free, were too powerful to be contained. The temple shook violently as they attempted the ritual, the walls cracking and crumbling around them. As the temple began to collapse, Lydia realized that there was only one way to stop the gods. She had to sacrifice herself, using the last of her strength to complete the ritual that would bind them once more. With trembling hands, she reached for the ancient symbols etched into the stone floor, her fingers tracing the lines of the ritual that had been performed centuries ago. The gods, sensing her intent, roared with fury. The air crackled with dark energy as they tried to stop her, but Lydia pressed on, her heart pounding with determination. She could feel the weight of the gods' power pressing down on her, their anger searing through her mind. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Forgive me, Lydia whispered to the others, her voice choked with emotion. This is the only way. Nathan, his mind clouded with the voices of the ancient languages, looked at her with wide, desperate eyes. Lydia, no. There has to be another way. But Lydia shook her head. This is our only chance. If I don't finish the ritual, the gods will be free to destroy everything. As she began to chant the ancient incantation, the temple walls shook violently. The ground beneath them split open, revealing a chasm of swirling energy. The gods' voices filled the chamber, a cacophony of rage and fear, but Lydia's voice rose above them all, strong and unwavering. One by one, the other members of the team felt their powers slipping away, drawn back into the abyss along with the gods. Nathan collapsed to the ground, clutching his head as the voices faded into silence. Isabel fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as the visions that had tormented her disappeared. Lucas, who had been struggling to control the earth beneath him, let out a sigh of relief as the tremors ceased. And Maya, whose body had been consumed by fire, felt the flames extinguish, leaving her breathless and weak, but Lydia paid the greatest price. As she chanted the final words of the ritual, she felt her very life force being drawn into the spell. Her body grew cold, her vision dimmed, and a deep exhaustion settled over her. She could feel the temple closing in around her, the walls sealing the gods, and herself, back within the mountain. In her final moments, Lydia saw the faces of her team, her friends, and a deep sorrow filled her heart. She had led them here, driven by her ambition and thirst for knowledge, and now she was the one who had to ensure they could leave. The weight of that responsibility crushed her, but she found peace in knowing that she was doing what had to be done. As the last of her strength ebbed away, Lydia whispered a final farewell. "I'm sorry." With those words, she collapsed, her body becoming part of the ritual, her soul bound to the temple along with the gods she had fought so hard to contain. The temple fell silent. The gods, now sealed once more, were trapped in their prison, and Lydia's sacrifice had ensured that the world would be safe, at least for a time. The remaining members of the team staggered to their feet, their bodies weak and battered, but alive. The realization of what had just happened hit them with full force. Lydia was gone, and the price of their curiosity had been the life of their leader. Nathan, his heart heavy with guilt, knelt beside Lydia's still form, tears streaming down his face. "I should have stopped you," he murmured, his voice trembling. "I should have found another way." Isabel, her face pale and drawn, placed a hand on his shoulder. "She did what she had to do. She saved us all." Lucas, usually so calm and composed, could only stare at the ground, his mind reeling. The power he had wielded, the control he had lost, it had all been for nothing. "We never should have come here," he muttered, his voice thick with regret. Maya, who had been the first to accept the gods' offer, was the most broken of them all. She had sought power, recognition, and instead, she had been consumed by it. The flames that had once danced at her command had left her scarred, both physically and emotionally. "I was so foolish," she whispered, tears choking her words. "I wanted so much. And now." Together, they helped each other out of the temple, their steps slow and heavy. The mountain, which had been so full of mystery and allure when they first arrived, now felt like a tomb, a place of death and sorrow. As they descended, the mountain seemed to sigh, as if acknowledging the sacrifice that had been made. The villagers, who had watched from afar, knew without being told that something terrible had happened. They saw the team returning, their faces haunted, their eyes hollow, and they understood. Back in the village, the remaining archaeologists gathered their things, preparing to leave. There was no celebration, no sense of triumph, only a deep, abiding grief for what they had lost. Before they left, Nathan returned to the edge of the village, where the old man had first warned them. He found the man sitting in the same place, his eyes distant and knowing. "The gods are sealed," Nathan said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "But Lydia. She's gone." The old man nodded slowly. "She did what had to be done. The gods will rest for now, but they are not gone. One day, someone else will come, and the cycle will begin again." Nathan felt a shiver run down his spine. The thought of the gods' power being unleashed upon the world once more was too terrible to bear. But he knew that the old man was right. The gods were patient, eternal. They would wait. As the team drove away from the village, the mountain receded into the distance, but it never truly left their minds. The scars of what they had experienced would stay with them forever, a constant reminder of the price of their ambition. Lydia's sacrifice had saved the world, but at a cost that none of them would ever forget. And deep within the mountain, the gods waited, their hunger for power and revenge growing stronger with each passing year. The world had been spared, but only for now.